Hi, so carrying on the videos from I've been doing before, looking at different members of the family. So at the moment the Langley family. This video is about Richard de Langley. He was born around 1325, if I remember right. I've just did it from memory now. And he is the grandson of Sir Edmund of Langley, who isn't the Edmund of Langley you get if you Google it. If you Google it, you get the wrong one. This one isn't related to the king. And he is, however, related to the Lord Chief Justice of England at the time. England and Wales, whichever, the Lord Chief Justice anyway. William Beresford. The Geoffrey of Langley that sets up home in Coventry, the one who's on the Third Crusade, his son has a Geoffrey. He has a son, Geoffrey. That son has Edmund, and Edmund's grandson is Richard. At this point, the Langley fortunes and the lands that they had in Coventry have split many ways. There's been children having 5 to 7 children, having another 5 or 7, girls getting married and taking land with them, lads getting married and gaining more lands, and the finances slowly dwindling down. There hasn't been a particular need for them to earn money in too many ways by the time Richard is around. Richard's branch of the family live in Prestwich or Pendlebury. Eventually it becomes Ashcroft Hall, or Ashcroft Hall, or Ashcroft Hall, whichever way you're going to say it. But not at his birth. He's not there then. And he comes to prominence because he goes to Oxford University. Now, Oxford University at that time, Oxford itself, the city's split between town and gown. So the university and the townspeople, the civilians, for want of a better word. And there's an awful lot of trouble. The students like to cause trouble. They like to mug people, beat people up. There's bar fights, and then they fight each other. The colleges are split between Welsh students in one, Scottish in another, Irish in another, and the north of England in one and the south of England in one. So there's 5 different colleges, 5 different schools, and they fight amongst themselves. Now the biggest fight that you find recorded is between the Welsh and the Northerners. No idea why. Obviously there's lots of fighting in general between the Welsh and the English previously and afterwards. The Welsh have got their chants that they shout towards the English, and the English have got their ways of riling the Welsh into fights as well. Murdering each other is just par for the course, and whenever the town tries to get any kind of punishment meted out to the students, the university just really doesn't act. When at one point the townspeople do take a deputation off to Woodstock to talk to Edward III, Edward III basically backs the college anyway, so he makes it quite clear where his loyalties are. So it's a bit of a it's quite a tricky time for Oxford, and it's that way for probably between 50 to 100 years as well. It's not an easily solved matter. So Richard de Langley then, so born 1325, he's at Oxford by the time he's 18, and he's a clerk. So from what I can gather, he's studying for basically payment. He's literate, so in order to pay for his studies he performs administrative tasks for somebody, and a school, the church, whatever. He's been educated, but he's also a scholar. I can't find the details as to what he's learning, who he's learning with, whether he's a churchman or what he is, but he's at the college and he's a clerk. I know he's there, and I know he's a clerk because on the 16th of March 1343 he kills somebody, and the coroner's records are online. You need to Google it, and I'll put sort of spellings up along here so that you can see it if you are interested in looking at it more. Maybe some links as well will come up. But yeah, so he kills another clerk, Hugh Delay. Now, he's Welsh and Richard is Lancastrian. What the cause of it is, it doesn't record it. It doesn't say that a fight broke out. It doesn't say what caused the problem. However, because the general fights between the colleges is recorded and the general trouble in Oxford, it's probably fair to say there was either some goading involved, some kind of fight, who knows, but it is recorded that Richard stabs Hugh Delay, or Hugh the Leg, I'm presuming Hugh Delay it said, but it's spelled Hugh the Leg. He stabs him in the throat with a penny bodkin. Again, bodkin, something long and pointy. It doesn't necessarily mean anything specific. A bodkin is used in weaving, a bodkin is used in sewing, it's used in leather making, it's like an awl and can make holes in things, it's used in basket work, it's also a kind of arrowhead, it's also a dagger, so it could be anything long and pointy, but it actually describes in the coroner's report it's a penny bodkin. I haven't got to the bottom of that bit. If you've got any ideas what that might be, feel free to let me know. But basically Richard gets a bit shirty and stabs him in the neck with a bodkin. He doesn't die immediately. He stabs him in the street. The street is named in the report, I think it was School Street or Shepherd Street, I can't remember which way around it is. Either way, neither of them seem to neither of them exist at the moment, but at the time Oxford's got Carfax, which is the meeting of the roads in the centre of the town, and an awful lot of the trouble is centred around Carfax. So safe to assume somewhere near the colleges, somewhere near the centre of the town, School Street, Shepherd Street. He's stabbed in the neck and he's taken to somebody's home in whichever School Street or Shepherd Street it was. There were the two streets. Whichever one it wasn't he was stabbed in, he gets taken to recover, to be nursed, or it could be that they know he's going to die and they take him away. When Hugh, the victim, is taken to the house, he's given the last rites. There is a priest with him when he dies. So it's probably fair to say that the wound, they knew it was going to be fatal, bleeding quite heavily, presumably jugular carotid, one of those kind of wounds, when he stabbed him. The word they actually use in the coroner's report is smote. He smote him in the throat with a penny bodkin is the words. Again, smote, I'm assuming it's a stab rather than a dragging it through or whatever. I reckon it's just a fight and he is using a knife implement at the time. The coroner gets called. Sudden death, he deals with it. The lawmakers, the bailiffs, everybody is there ready to arrest Richard. They want to arrest Richard, they're looking for Richard, but it seems that nobody involved at the time knows who he is. So they don't know his name, where he's come from, who his ward is, where his belongings are, where he lives. Now I don't know, is that hard to believe or not? Do they know? Are they covering up? Is the whole town gown thing so inbuilt that they won't grass somebody up? They won't tell who it is. Do they plot revenge themselves? Are they worried about family connections? It just doesn't say. But basically, despite having the people there ready to arrest him, he's never arrested, or at least it doesn't record the arrest. It records that they don't know who he is and they can't charge him. We can assume at that point that Richard's basically run away, or is the fact his granddad is important in the worlds of justice relevant? Is his family relevant? We don't know. But he basically ruins his chance of getting into the church and ruins his literary career. I don't know. His way of making money was always down that route, and he's basically has to make his way through the world in a different way. So It's not then recorded what happens. We don't know what happens there, except that we do know that he dies on Chevauchée with John of Gaunt in 1369, and we know that he's in John of Gaunt's household in 1369, and just previously to 1360 he's in John of Gaunt's household. So whatever happens to him, whether he goes up north, well, presumably he goes up north, he makes his way back into the world, back into his family, back amongst the Lancastrians, and back into that world that he came from. I did read somewhere he was involved also in the kidnapping of the King of Scotland with his brother or cousin. I've not yet been able to refine that to be able to quote that properly and take it as read, because what I am finding when I'm doing this research is there is so much that's wrong. Like, for example, we've got Langleys that are married to Plantagenets, and they're not, because they're not. There's no record of the Plantagenet ever marrying the Langley. Now that's probably more important. So there are false leads, especially when the names are so similar. So I cannot find now which King of Scotland it was, though I assume it's David, and I can't work out which battle it was, but I can assume it's the Battle of Neville's Cross. So assuming he was at Neville's Cross, it's the right time for him to be. The Lancastrians were forgiven from fighting at Cressy so that they could go and fight and protect the northern border. So it's very, very likely that if Richard had ran away, he would have made his way north to his family. The Lancastrians were sat waiting for Scotland to invade because they knew they would. They were tipped off, and it was pretty much commonplace that they did this anyway. They knew that the minute that England were engaged in battle in France, the Scottish would come down again, start to take Durham and Berwick-on-Tweed and those other places. So we can assume that Richard would have been involved at Neville's Cross, or there or thereabouts, and been around that time. I say I can't find that last piece of information about how he was involved with David, although he's not the recorded kidnapper of David. But by fighting again, Neville's Cross, basically an awful lot of high profile Scottish lords were kidnapped, including the king, and the king is taken for ransom, and there's a bit of a to do because the ransomer wants to speak to the king, and the king's in France, and the queen's already gone with them into battle in the first place. She's led them to Neville's Cross, and suddenly they don't want to speak to her, so she gets a bit, not happy. But the guy ends up being pardoned, but he doesn't get any money very quickly, and it's all, again, I'm not a battle person, but it's to and fro-ing. But it's fair to say that after Neville's Cross, the money starts flowing again, and the honours start coming, battle honours start coming, and things start moving again for the Langleys. So Richard starts to build Ashcroft Hall. It's spelt and said differently in different places. He starts building that 1360-ish, there or thereabouts. In 1360 he has his son, and his son is born at Huntingdon, John of Gaunt's palace. So again, safe to assume there that Richard's well in with at least that side of the family. Ashcroft Hall itself is fascinating too, because again, if you Google this, I'll try and put some pictures up around as well, but Ashcroft Hall itself was moved in its entirety from its place in Prestwich, just outside Manchester, from its place just in Lancashire, just outside Manchester, moved in its entirety during the Victorian period to Virginia in the USA, and it's a replica Tudor mansion now, but originally it was being built by Richard de Langley at the time. And as I say, Richard then just becomes a soldier. Can't find if he's a knight or not, but safe to say he goes off to France. He dies in France on a chevauchée, either with John or with Edward, but we don't know which one. It just says chevauchée in France. So that's the story of him. No pictures, nothing around, but yeah, our murdering relative obviously makes his way back in life, and actually he starts to build the fortunes back up. So thank you.